So this is case study 7, calculating and analyzing progress. We're group 2. My name is Sana Tapavalu.
My name is Roy Glover.
Gusani Bisura.
I'm Mackenzie McCraw.
Okay, so for our agenda today, we'll be doing the case overview and then the questions and answers. For the case overview, we're basically going through a weekly executive staff meeting. This company's selling price of their company stock has hit a 5-year low. The company was downgraded by a rating agency, and they're receiving pressure from Wall Street about some of their new projects. The company decreased dividend payments to their investors to save money, and they're having a difficult time to produce and deliver to the marketplace at minimal cost. So in the company's past, they've been good at adding value to existing products, but not necessarily creating new ones. And there's a need for innovation at the moment. So Al Gray, who's the president and CEO of the company, hands out 2 documents. The first document shows the failed R&D projects. 5 out of their 7 projects failed. Some made it all the way to completion, while others did not. And there was a total of 12 R&D projects, and 5 of them generated revenue, but not enough to meet their desired cash flow. And you can see the document below. Document 2 was the money spent on the 7 failed projects. There was a lot of blame that was put on the project management office because they did not agree with the process that was used for the portfolio selection. But at the end of the day, it's everyone's responsibility to agree on the selected recommendations. So here we can see a table of the R&D termination costs and the reasons for their failure. So Al Gray questions project managers as to why the realization of failure is so late in the project lifecycle phase. And Doug Wilson, the vice president of engineering and R&D, basically just defends his team and tells them that they're doing their best. Ann Hawthorne, who's the vice president for marketing, says that the engineers are too optimistic about the projects that they're choosing, and they end up spending more of the company's money rather than requesting money for the government R&D contracts, and that the engineers should have foreseen the issues and canceled the projects earlier on. Al Gray also says that the project status reports only show information on budgets and schedules, and there's a need to establish other metrics early on in the project lifecycle. Everyone pretty much agrees with that, but there's a limited amount of people that have experience in metrics management. Carol Daniels, who's the chief information officer, has a project management office that is created to report to her and support senior staff in portfolio selection processes. They also create dashboards with information of strategic plan performance, and they decide to take the lead on establishing the metrics that the CEO is requesting. So although she took the lead on that, there are still some underlying issues and concerns, mainly time and the complexity of establishing the metrics. CEO schedules an executive meeting to discuss the developing metrics and asks his staff to prepare a list of necessary metrics for early project decision making and identifying potential problems to address to accomplish the tasks.
The first question we have with this project is, can the failure of the R&D actually be devastating to a company? Yes, it can. If a company begins to lose money on each of their research and developing projects at a steady pace over and over again, the company would then file for bankruptcy, and that be no more longer the company. When a project work goes bad, or a failure occurs in the common practice place, does finger pointing and blame happen? Yes, even at the executive level, finger pointing and blaming will happen when you put a group of people together and then try to single out punishment. Nobody in that type of area will want to take on the punishment for something that others done. So anytime like that, you'll want to try to separate everybody and give everybody a separate goal so you can establish who did what. What information was in figure one? Well, back in figure one, the project manager set up a scale to show which R&Ds was a failure and why. Well, they didn't say why. It just shows which ones was a failure and which ones failed at a higher rate and which ones are successful. The information I was lacking in figure one was why did it do good or bad? I believe it should have added what the good projects had in common, what the bad ones have in common, so they can establish what was good and what was bad out of the company and they can progress going forward.
Okay, for question 5, is it possible that highly talented resources can overthink an R&D project to the point where they look for the most complicated solution rather than the simple one? I feel like yes, they can, due to the fact that the research and development project, you can spend a lot of time researching and innovation because it's new to you and you want to know all the pros and cons about it. And then also when the project is completed, people's lives are at stake. So if it's not researched properly, that could be a reason to overthink.
Question 6, is it good or bad to have 5 R&D projects out of 12? I will say on an overall overview, no, it's not good to have 5 successful projects out of 12 because all projects cost time, energy, skills, and also thinking and human resources. So it's better to have one eyes on a few projects and making sure that everything is going well with those projects instead of having much more projects and at the end fail most of them and succeed on 2 of them because it's not even good for the company reputation, and other people won't trust those companies because they don't succeed most of the time on their project. Can a project manager and PMO prevent failure? A PMO should have control over the budget, planning, and the team that are working over the project. So he should be able to define all those aspects and also motivate his employer. So I would say a PMO could prevent a failure because you have to take care of risk, critical dates, and make sure continuously that the project is on the good road and try to see what is wrong and fix it. So if it take action earlier, those issues could be fixed by the end of the project. So I will say yes, a PMO could prevent failure. Is it inherently dangerous to encourage a project manager to recommend that his or her project be terminated during early life cycle phases? I would say yes. On every project, if an issue occur and action are taken on the early phases, at that moment, too much finance hadn't been added to the project, energy, or even human resources. So at that moment, it will be great to take good action and either stop the project right away if there is no quick solution, or either stop the project to see what is wrong, to restart it again from where it had been stopped. So it's great, on my opinion, to encourage the project manager to terminate a project during the early life cycle. It will help him find a better solution for the good work of the project. who, if anyone, should be blamed for the failure of the project in this case study? The success of the project is the responsibility of the RD department and the PMO. So at that moment, in this case study, as the case study show it, it's better for both of them to make sure that they have a proper planning and also make sure that everything on the project is on the good road. Like that, they do their jobs, they take their responsibilities, and at the end, the project will be successful. So both of them should be blamed if a project fails.
Okay, and then for question 10, is Anne Hawthorne's description of engineers realistic? I agree with her up until a certain point where she's talking about the engineers refusing to admit that projects have budgets and schedules. I feel like as an engineer, their job is to make sure the whole structure is stable and to make sure that it's safe to go inside of. And they may take more time than has been allotted just to research and make sure that they're, everything is good with the building. So just due to people having to be in the project that they're building, engineers have to be certain with the math behind everything, that everything is correct. So I think that her opinion was a little off a little bit, but I do agree with her up to a certain point.
Okay, so for the next question, would you agree with Al Gray that the real cause of the failures appears to be lack of good metrics? If this is the case, then how do you justify that the other projects were successful? I do agree with Al Gray in that case. There is a need for information from the early stages of the projects to be documented. And when these metrics are taken correctly, the project management office is able to report those potential issues that they find. They can report them earlier on to avoid wasting money later on. How do I justify the other projects that were successful? I feel like project success is based on engineering goals and accurate portfolio selection. So 5 out of the 12 projects were successful, but did not actually accomplish the desired cash flow. The engineers for these projects in particular did not overestimate themselves, and the data that was collected by them and the metrics that were established were sufficient for those particular projects. But I feel like in order to get a higher success rate, they would need to work with more accurate metrics and information. Should the PMO take the lead in the establishment of the metrics? I think they should. They're working firsthand with the projects and the products that they're working on, and they're part of the project lifecycle from start to finish. So because of that, they'll have all the necessary information to put into the metrics, and they'll be able to report to upper management about any issues at any phase of the project that might occur. Next is, are a few days enough time for the follow-on meeting, and should the executives attend? I think it depends on the level of detail they want to develop at that time for the meeting, for the metrics. If he's just asking for a simple outline of the different steps they should take to create the metrics establishment, then yes, I do think a few days is enough time. But if he wants a detailed report of how each task will be measured and a little bit more specific details on the metrics, then I think he should give them about a week or so to come up with that. But that's it. Thank you guys for watching our presentation, and we'll see you in class.